I'll be quick. My name is Andrea. I'm the executive director here at the Potter's House. I just wanted to offer a quick welcome. It's nice to have you all here in our space this evening. I'm curious, how many of you, and no shame, this is not to shame anyone, how many of you have been here before?
Woo!
Great. That's good to hear. The Potter's House has been around since 1960, but there are a lot of folks who, if they haven't spent a lot of time in this neighborhood, are not familiar with us being here. So we were actually founded by a church. So a lot of roots there, but a lot of roots in social justice and activism over the decades, which is pretty interesting. And one of the major programs for us is we give out free meals every day. So if you happen to see Pay It Forward, if you notice that if you went up to get a drink, that's what that is about, is our free meals. And we give out over 20,000 free meals every year. So, but I will say, our ability to give out those free meals is actually very much because of the community. And the fact that folks come in and they see that they can give a donation, and it helps keep that running. So I'm gonna stop there and turn it over to Michael. I'm also gonna look for some batteries and see if we can get the mics going. But thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoy your time in our space this evening.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, this is working.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight to celebrate Deficient in DC with Michael and the Organization for Youth Empowerment. Before we get started, I'm going to be introducing the moderator and also just giving a little bit of background about tonight's event. Following the book talk and the Q&A, Michael will be doing a signing over in the corner where you first came in. At that time, we'll also pull the name of the raffle winner. So if you didn't when you came in, you can feel free at the end to put your name in the hat with one of the purple tickets. And the raffle prize is going to be a free signed book and a free OYE t-shirt. We'd also love to take pictures with you after the event, so please feel free to share any photos on social media using hashtag DeficientDC. It's hung up all around, and tag Michael on any of the platforms. So now I'm happy to introduce our moderator for the evening, Patriece Nelson. Patriece is a professional marketer, longtime supporter and volunteer for OYE, and friend and super fan of Michael Solis. She has read many of Michael's books in beta form and is excited to be a part of Michael's first book launch. Patriece.
Thank you so much, Kiana. I don't know, can you guys hear me? Okay, great. So I'm super excited to be here, and I do want to say that we are absolutely here to celebrate Michael's first book launch, Deficient. Let's give him another round of applause. It has definitely been an honor to watch this process. This has been years in the making, and we are super proud of Michael to be able to have his first book published. So congratulations to you, Michael. All right, so I want to start really quickly with giving an overview of who Michael is. And I'm going to read this because I don't want to mess it up. Michael Solis is a writer and development and humanitarian professional. I'm going to kill the mic. Sorry.
Do you think this one? Yeah. Do you want to try this one? Sounds a little tough. Yeah.
All right, let's start this over. Michael Solis is a writer and development and humanitarian professional who has been living and working across Asia, Latin America, and Africa over the past 15 years, so he speaks a lot of different languages. He's a Princeton graduate, yes. He went on to study international human rights, law, and gender studies. He's a writer of science fiction, fantasy, and creative nonfiction. His writing has been published in Huffington Post, The Atlantic, and Oxford University Press, among other publications. Deficient is his first novel, and he failed to put in here, which I'm going to add, Michael is a yoga guru, if you do not know. So if you need some yoga tips, he is the guy. He is a rubber band. All right. So I want to start with a little bit of highlights some of the reviews of the book that we're really excited about. So Kirkus Reviews describes Deficient as an attention-grabbing story that tackles the themes of belonging. Queer Science Fiction calls Deficient a superb debut novel filled with humor, suspense, action, mystery, and many surprises. Deficient has been nominated for the 2024 Penn Hemingway Award for Best Debut Novel, as well as the 2023 American Library Association Stonewall Award. Deficient will also be nominated for a 2024 Pushcart Prize. I think that we owe Michael another applause. So again, we are so proud of Michael, and I want to pass it off to him to talk a little bit about the book.
Thank you, Patrice. Thank you, Kiana. And thank you, all of you here tonight. It's great to see people in the Potter's House. A big thanks also to the Potter's House and taking time out of your busy lives to come here and talk with me about Deficient. Yeah, really happy to be here. And yeah, thanks to our hostess with the mostess. So thanks, Patrice. So Deficient. I think some of you, maybe raise your hand if you have read Deficient yet. Most people haven't, right? So it's just come out a few weeks. Okay, some people are in it. Yeah. So most people haven't read the book yet. But Deficient takes place in a future world. It's the story of Alejandro Aragon, who's a student living in the future in a world where humans have evolved to acquire supernatural abilities. However, there's a very small subset of the population that has stayed normal. They are powerless and they are called deficients. So Alejandro is one of the deficients in this future world. He doesn't have a supernatural ability like his friends and family members. And he leads a really difficult life. He faces a lot of discrimination, stigma, bullying. It's a tough road for a deficient. And it gets even tougher for him because he has one best friend in his life. She faces a hate crime against her ability type, and she ends up disappearing. So Alejandro has to figure out what happened to his friend Yolanda, who's responsible, and why did they do it before it's too late. So that's the crux of the story. It imagines a future where we've kind of overcome some of these issues that are affecting us now and are creating divisions and divide people, right? So issues related to race, ethnicity, sexuality, gender. So in the future, we as humans have actually evolved and have overcome these issues. But one of the key questions that I was asking myself was, what if humans were to change fundamentally at their core, at their essence, in a way that created a new type of differentiation amongst us? How would we respond? Would we do this peacefully, in harmony, and accept everyone for who they are and who they aren't? Or would we kind of revert back to some of our old patterns of creating hierarchies, castes, that we use to justify violence and discrimination? So I chose the latter because I think it makes for a more interesting book. But I think it raises a lot of questions around some of these issues of self-acceptance, uniqueness, self-love and affirmation, and overcoming adversity. And I think these are some issues that we all can relate to. We know that these are issues that young people growing up can relate to. And the book is a teen novel, but of course the themes are quite universal. And I think all of us as adults can also remember how difficult growing up was, and how we face some of these things, and how we continue to face some of these things into adulthood. I wrote Deficient in 2011 and 2012 when I was living in Honduras, working for the Organization for Youth Empowerment. So I see a lot of OYE people in the room, which is fantastic to see, people who have engaged as volunteers, as staff, as founders. OYE is a fantastic organization that we'll hear about a little bit more down the line. When I was working in OYE, I was more focused on business development, communications, and then supporting volunteers and volunteer groups that were coming to Honduras to work with OYE, and to learn more about Honduras and the youth that we were working with. The youth in Honduras faced a lot of challenges related to violence, crime, drugs, access to education, poverty. So a lot to overcome, a lot of obstacles that perhaps go beyond what some of us have experienced in our own lives. So I was really inspired by the work experience, by the youth that we were working with. I was doing, I actually started a creative writing program with some of the youth, and it's really cool to see that actually some of the OYE youth have become writers themselves. So I think we'll learn more about OYE, but I think the impact that experience had in my life, and carving out some space to focus creatively on a book like Deficient, OYE holds a very near and dear place in my heart. And I think, perhaps without further ado, I wanted to invite Justin Eldridge Otero, who's a co-founder of OYE, to share a few words about OYE, what it is and what it does.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. My name is Justin. I'm an OYE co-founder. I'm just going to share with you a little bit about OYE. So OYE operates in Honduras, and OYE's mission is to give access to education for at-risk youth, essentially providing youth the opportunity to empower themselves, empower their communities, break cycles of poverty, and really discover themselves, their own passions, their own talents, and become agents of change in their own lives, right? Take control of their own lives and really feel like they have agency in this world. And so, you know, we just celebrated 18 years operating in Honduras. OYE has 18 years is a long time in Honduras. You know, OYE has handed out over 1,000 high school and college scholarships. That's kind of the foundational part of the organization. And when I say scholarships, just to give a little context, about $70 per month is the difference between a family sending their high school kid to work and earning $70 a month, or going to college and potentially putting that young person on a track to transform their lives and their families' lives. And so these scholarships are to go to free schools and free universities, but the $70 is transportation, photocopies, school supplies. And so these are families really living on the margins, and OYE comes in and kind of fills that gap with a scholarship. And their daughter or son can go on and continue their education and hopefully seek a career and a profession. About over 70% of OYE scholarship recipients are the first in their families to graduate high school. Where about 60% of our scholarship recipients are young women. And I've got to give a shout out to Michael and his time in Honduras, because Michael transformed OYE during his time with the organization. He really set the table for the institution and really built resilient structures within OYE that allowed us to become an award-winning organization further down the line. So I'd like to give a big shout out to Michael for all his amazing work. You can't walk anywhere in northern Honduras with Michael and not run into someone that's going to stop and chat you up. You might as well be the mayor up there. I appreciate any support that you can give to OYE. Just to put it in perspective, about $70 a month is the difference between a young kid having to go to work and dropping out of high school and potentially going on to college and transforming their lives. And so, without further ado, I pass it back to Patriece.
Thank you, Stino. So, short story, very short story. When I first met Michael in Honduras, obviously, I came back and I said, Justin, where did you find him? I love him. He's amazing. He really has done so much for so many people. And I know that we keep clapping for you and giving you all of these accolades, but I hope that you feel the love in the room that everybody has for you today, Michael. All right, I'm gonna kick it off with some questions. So you already touched on this a little bit, but I wanna get into a little bit more detail. You mentioned that you wrote The Deficient while you were living in Honduras. How did that experience influence your writing of the book?
Yeah. Okay. I went to Honduras after dropping out of law school. So I was in law school for like 3 weeks, and as I was there, I was going, what did I do? I'm just in the library every day. I really wanted to write. I wanted to do more international work, and I just got into crisis mode. So I remember I was really passionate about youth empowerment because I had done an internship or like a volunteer experience in Ireland with Fighting Words by Roddy Doyle, which is a space that promotes, creative learning among young people in Ireland and promotes writing. And it was a really cool experience. And so as I was in law school, I was looking up, how can I work in youth empowerment in Latin America? And then I found the Organization for Youth Empowerment. And I was like, this is really serendipitous, yeah? So got out of law school, got into a debt after 3 weeks, right, of law school, which is pretty crazy, and started working in Honduras. And it was really an amazing experience. Just the challenges, meeting so many people. I think it was maybe Maria who might have said to me, it was right after the economic crisis, so a lot of nonprofit organizations at the time were really struggling. So it was kind of OYE needed a boost, OYE needed some help, like many agencies, and the business development component of OYE was really important. But as I was sitting in the office writing proposals and trying to get some money into the organization, you'd be surrounded and swarmed by the youth of OYE with all their ideas, all their creativity, working on things like radio, sports, artwork, graphic design, writing, and there was just so much energy in the room. So when I'd go home or on the weekends in very hot, sweaty El Progreso, I'd clack away at the computer, and there was that story in my brain, even during law school, that I wanted to write, but knew that I probably wouldn't get it down on paper if I was stuck in a library. Yeah. So I think Honduras provided the time. I remember Patrice at one point said, "Michael, you're going to have a lot of time in El Progreso." She said, "There's not that much to do there," but I tried to use the time wisely and creatively. So I think, I think that's more or less that experience. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Yes, time moves very slow in Honduras somehow. All right, this next question is a loaded question, and I'm really excited to ask this one. So the concept of being deficient is an idea that many of us can relate to, especially at a younger age, of course. As a biracial member of the LGBTQ community who speaks multiple languages and has experienced so many different cultures, how have you felt deficient? How have you overcome those feelings? And how did you turn that weakness into a strength, especially as it relates to the book?
Ooh. Wow, okay, that's a strong one. So I guess, a little bit about my family. So my father is a very large Mexican-American man. He was a professional wrestler, so he wrestled for a long time. That was his background. He was paid to beat up people. And he came from kind of the border region of Texas and Mexico. Very conservative, very Catholic. And my mother is a white lady from New Jersey who became a hula dancer in Hawaii. She'd probably be canceled today if she did that, but she did that many years ago. They met, and then poof, 3 children, and so I grew up kind of in an interesting family environment, but also as kind of, I did have gender non-conforming behavior growing up. I was a queer kid growing up in the 90s, very confused. I see a few people from our hometown. It was a very conservative place, even though it was in New Jersey. And there were all types of sentiments around race, around homophobia, within, I think, families, within schools, within the community. So I would say, like we say the language of safe space, I would say, the town itself wasn't really a safe space, and the world was very different back then. The town has changed a lot since then, which is great to see, but growing up it was quite a challenge. And I think, like having this sort of father figure who was like this mighty, athletic force, this wrestling persona, and someone who had really, strict ideas around what it meant to be, I think, masculine, or what it meant to be a boy, or what it meant to be a man, as many people had. And then being someone who didn't really conform with anything. I think things like athleticism were really valued, and like I was the worst athlete of all time. Like one game I was playing basketball and I thought I was doing so good, and I was dribbling and I was like, no one's chasing me. I'm so fast, I'm so good at this. I shot the ball into the wrong basket and missed. So it was really embarrassing, and my dad was my coach and he was just like, oh. So I kind of wished growing up like someone, and I tried to play every sport. I tried to play every single sport, messed them all up, was equally bad in all of them. And I was just really trying to become something or be something that I wasn't. And I kind of just wish that someone maybe just touched me on the shoulder and was like, Michael, just be yourself. Like, you don't have to do all this stuff. You don't have to impress us. You don't have to be a certain type of boy or a certain type of whatever. Just be you. So I think learning to self-love, learning to accept what I was, what I had to offer to the world, I think was quite a journey for me. And I think that has been probably, in terms of feeling deficient, I think that's been probably the crux of that story. Yeah. Hopefully I answered the question.
Yeah. Part 2 to that. So how did that show up in the book?
How did that show up in the book? So Alejandro, I think, is grappling with this in a different way. As a deficient living in a world of superpowered people, I think I tried to take the experience that I felt and apply that same message to Alejandro. And I think his voice sounds very much like my own, and I would even like to look at old journal entries that I wrote and try to figure out how do I channel myself. When I wrote Deficient, I was in my the first draft, I was in my 20s. So I was trying to go back a few years and say, okay, how did I think when I was 15 or 16? And how can I capture that perspective of someone who's going through something similar, but in this future type of discrimination that existed? So yeah, that's how Alejandro evolved. But I always imagined Alejandro also, because I was an OYE, I imagined him as, there's a lot of me in there, but I kind of imagined him as an OYE kid, yeah? So if you get one of the cards, and all these cards are free, please, so take the character cards. I kind of imagine him as a you know, also kind of like a kid from El Progreso. So yeah, a bit of a melange of things. Yeah.
Thank you. I really do love that. I'm not gonna spoil the book, so you guys have to read it. But I really do love that, you know, there's this transition point where that weakness that everybody sees as a weakness turns into a strength. And I think that that's very powerful, and I think that, you know, Michael, you're an amazing human being, but also we all appreciate that you accept yourself, and that is your superpower. So, oh, and please don't forget to write your superpower over there, because it's a great moment to celebrate yourself. All right. So the Deficient is a mixture of genres. So we have young adult, we have science fiction, superhero, and a deeply compelling story. How did you come up with the mystery behind the story?
Okay. Yeah, it's a bit of a mix of genres. And I think it goes back to maybe what I said earlier around like Alejandro and his story. So wanted to create a character who's living in this future world, who's really struggling with self-love and you know, and thinking about, so what would be the most important thing for a person who's really struggling to maybe love himself or accept himself for who he is? Someone who feels powerless in a world of the powerful. So he has the one best friend, which is kind of an archetype, the best friend archetype, the two of us against the world kind of thing, which I had a lot of those connections throughout my life. I think in elementary school, in high school, in college, after college, in the different countries where I've lived. I kind of, you know, link with one person very well and build strong relationships that way. So I thought, okay, how can I make Alejandro's life even worse? Just beyond the bullying and beyond discrimination. What if you take the rock in Alejandro's life and remove it from him? The person who he depends on for his self-confidence, the person who defends him when he's being bullied, the person who comes to his aid, the person who's there emotionally for him all the time. So I think that's where the mystery emerged. What if you take, in this case, Yolanda, the best friend figure, remove her from the picture, and create a mystery behind that loss? And then ultimately, it kind of puts Alejandro in an interesting position because he feels powerless, he doesn't have a supernatural ability, he has to figure this all out on his own and find a way and look inward to figure out how to solve this mystery and crack the case, essentially. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Deficient is classified as young adult, but obviously many of us adults can relate to this. And it definitely spoke to me as an older person, and also remembering that I used to be young a long time ago. I'm older than I look. But as the author, what do you hope readers truly take away from the novel, and then as adolescents and early adulthood, and then also beyond?
We're all young at heart. And I loved living I lived in Sierra Leone for 6 years, and there, like, you could call yourself a youth up until age 35. I don't know if that exists in other countries, but I was really happy. I was calling myself a youth for many, many years. And then I turned 36 and it was like, oh God. But anyway, I try not to tell people what they should take away from the book. I think the book is, you know, everyone will take away whatever message that they want to take. But it does tackle themes of belonging, about self-acceptance, uniqueness, and overcoming adversity. So I think we can all engage with those themes. They're quite universal. I think people who feel perhaps left out, who feel different, who feel like they're struggling with something around their identity, or, you know, whatever struggle that may be, probably can connect with the experience of Alejandro as a bit of an underdog, who's struggling against a really difficult system, because Alejandro doesn't really have safety in the house, at school, in society at large, and he really depends on kind of that one connection of acceptance, and when that's removed, it's quite difficult. So I think there's that connection there that a lot of people can make. And then, you know, of course, you know, no one's perfect. We all have our flaws, and I know that there are people out there who have kind of assumed the archetype of bully in their lives, whether that's in schools or even into adult life, and we've all encountered bullies everywhere we go. Perhaps if someone can, you know, reading the book, maybe experience, because it's a first-person book, you learn, you know, about Alejandro's experience through his eyes, and to see what someone goes through when they're facing that type of stigma and discrimination, hopefully it makes a human connection. And I think that's the beauty about books, and, you know, it forces us through the pages that we have to put ourselves in the shoes of another person, experience another perspective, and then perhaps by doing that, we can learn to live in a better way that benefits not just ourselves, but I think our environment and society more at large.
I think for those of us who have read the book and who are going to read the book, you'll definitely see Alejandro in yourself. And you'll definitely feel it in multiple ways. Okay, I'm gonna throw you a curveball. When is part 2 coming out?
It's a work in progress. So I actually wrote, I started writing the second one and the third one when I was living in Sierra Leone. So there is a very messy draft out there for sequels of Deficient, but I'm trying to use the time that I'm in the US now to focus on that one and really clean up the pages. But it will take time, but I'm committed to continuing the story. It is a standalone book, so the book has a beginning, middle, and end, and it wraps up in one book. But it does lend itself, I think nicely to future stories, allowing it to continue. And I think we've become, over the years, interested in series and thinking it's being prolonged over time. But I think there's a lot more material there to continue.
Okay, as a super fan, I think that it could be at least 3. I also think that it could definitely be a movie series. So we're crossing our fingers. We can cast Justin in it maybe if he asks right. All right, so I want to pass it over to you to read us a few passages from the book.
Okay. Forgot about it. I don't have enough hands. And I need glasses because I'm no longer a youth. Okay. All right, so I think most of us haven't read the book yet, right? So I thought it would make sense to start with the first chapter. The book actually starts with this table of abilities. I don't know if anyone can see this. So you can see the power hierarchies, the types of abilities that the people in this world have. And of course, it builds like a hierarchy. So the lowest of the low would be the deficiently accelerated, or deficients as they're colloquially called. I've selected 2 passages. They're short, but they won't give away anything, no spoilers. But the first chapter gives you a little bit of a glimpse into Alejandro's experience. Yeah. So chapter 1, hyenas and cowards. Life never goes the way you want it to when you're a deficient. It's a lesson I learned long ago, 7 years ago to be exact. Now at 15, it's one I'm reminded of every morning on the way to the academy. My forehead cools as I rested against the smooth glass of the shuttle bus window. I don't bother paying attention to the hovering vehicles outside or the bright blue lights of the highway. Instead, I watch raindrops race to the bottom of the foggy window. Some drops are bigger than others. They gobble up the smaller ones as they slide down, but the big ones pay the price for their size. After absorbing so many of the tiny droplets, they grow too large to sustain themselves. They succumb to gravity, falling from the window to their deaths on the illuminated highway below. Splat. My thoughts snap back to my surroundings, and my eyes dart to the biggest droplet of all, a gooey glob of saliva that splashed near the upper corner of the inside of my window. I grit my teeth. Idiots. The 4th-year atlases sitting across the aisle cackle away. You missed, moron, one says. I won't next time, the second replies. My skin prickles with goosebumps, a familiar sign of fight or flight. But fleeing isn't possible, and fighting won't help. The evolutionary theorist should have come up with a 3rd option for a deficient who's backed into a corner. With their enhanced strength, atlases can do whatever they want with someone like me. Aren't you going to stand up for yourself, defective loser? The 3rd one asks. I fail to answer the question, a trick that usually buys me some time, though it tends to generate immediate resentment. Say something, defect. He's so stupid he can't even talk, says the first. Ironic, since his brain is dimmer than a black hole. Knowing I can only remain silent for so long, I let out a deep sigh before turning away from the window to stare at them. Something, I mutter. Their eyebrows narrow, and their words transform into snarls. They remind me of a pack of rabid dogs. This deficient fecker thinks he's smart. The second atlas inhales and releases another wad of phlegm that spurts out so fast I can't dodge it. It hits me hard on the cheek, forcing me to turn toward the window once again. Splat, 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 splat. I raise my arm to block the onslaught of spit. It ends after a few seconds. The atlases laugh and give each other high fives. I wipe at the warm, sticky moisture on my face with the sleeve of my academy jacket. The contrast between the gooey yellow mucus and black fabric makes my stomach churn. I want to hurl every curse I know at the atlases, but I bite my tongue. Provoking them was a stupid mistake. Acting on my emotions never ends well. 2 years until I'm out of Hatch 1. It feels like forever, but it will come eventually. Counting down the hours left in the day usually helps, a reminder that time is, in fact, passing, though it's a little early in the morning to start doing that. The shuttle bus comes to a stop. The Atlases get up and laugh their way down the aisle. Quieter kids look away as they rush past my seat. None are willing to stand up in my defense, let alone look me in the eye. They scamper to the exit, panicking as if the shuttle bus has suddenly gone blaze. They're hyenas and cowards, all of them. Once all the students have passed, I slide my backpack over my shoulder and make for the door. The shuttle bus driver looks out the window instead of rewarding me with a goodbye or wishing me a great day like he does the other students. I don't mind. I've had 7 years to get used to not being acknowledged. The shuttle bus lifts into the air and starts to accelerate before I can dismount. Thanks, Mr. Shuttle Bus Driver. I jump. My legs wobble when I touch the ground, but my landing seems to be getting better. I take in the dampness of the November air before I see it. The place I hate more than any other on this planet. Achewan Egalitarian Academy. I shudder. 7 hours down, only 17 more to go. And that's chapter 1. So the second and last passage that I'll read is a little shorter, but it takes place a couple pages later, and we're introduced to another character, which is the character of Yolamba, who is Alejandro's friend. Yolamba's really cool, as we'll see from this passage. I think she's really cool, and she has a cool power. She's known as a feral, and ferals are kind of not your common abilities. They're very rare, kind of wild card abilities. So hers is she can actually draw things, and when she draws them, they come into existence. Yeah. There's some rules around her power, what she can do, what she can't do, but she has, I think, kind of a cool ability. So Alejandro's being bullied again as he's entering the school. So there's a character named Landon who's actually just finished bullying him. So Landon says, "You never learned your lesson, do you? I should have knocked your deficient teeth out long ago." My heart palpitates into hyperdrive. Not only is Landon an Atlas, but he's on the Academy's security track, which means he's trained in all kinds of martial arts. If he wants to kill me, he probably knows 1,000 ways to do it. A sudden boom of thunder draws my attention upward. A tsunami of charcoal clouds floods the sky, consuming the gray haze. I've never seen the transition happen so quickly. A giant scratch of white lightning cracks across the black clouds, and the thunder roars yet again. The rain that follows is an onslaught, like we're beneath a waterfall. "Scheisse," Landon says. He tosses me to the side, and I plummet to the ground with a painful thud. I'm wet and cold. My face is pressed against the stone, and my lip is moist and tastes like copper. Splattering feet shuffle past me. No one stops to ask what's wrong or to help me up. It's not the first time I wish I could disappear like an unseen. Ale! I smile into the ground when I hear my nickname. It's not a name I hear often. In fact, there's only one person at the Academy who uses it. I push myself onto my hands and knees to see Yolamba running toward me, her gray Academy skirt swishing. In one hand, Yolamba is holding a glowing umbrella that emits a generous halo of white light. It evaporates the raindrops before they reach her head, keeping her dry. In her other hand, she has her sketchbook. "Alejandro Aragon," Yolamba says as soon as she's at my side. She twitches her nose at me, a natural tick. "Don't tell me you let that piece of scheisse knock you down again." "What else was I supposed to do, y'alls? Stand up for yourself, fight back, defend your rights." I can't help but laugh as she guides me to my feet. "Sure, fight back against Landon." I wipe the grit from my face. "Any other death wishes you want me to make while I'm at it?" "He's a dim-witted Atlas. Your mind can dance circles around his. And he can crack my head open like a chicken egg wherever he wants. I prefer to keep my brain inside my skull, thank you very much." Shielding me from the rain with her glowing umbrella, Yolamba interlocks her plump arm with mine as we walk to the Academy's entrance. In the light of the spotless lobby, I notice Yolamba's braids have changed to violet, matching the new color of her eyes. The day before, her hair had been a shocking pink, and her eyes their normal brown. The grin on her face is wide and mischievous. I can tell she's been up to something. You were the one who made that storm happen, weren't you? I ask. Yolanda winks a purple eye and opens her sketchbook. I see a drawing of Landon and me on the walkway. Rain pours from the sky and a bolt of lightning flashes above our heads in the picture. It was a quick sketch, but it served its purpose. It's hard to suppress my smile as I think about Yolanda's ability to draw objects and scenarios into existence. She's the only feral at the academy with that kind of talent. To the other students, she's a freak, but to me, she's magical.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Voila.
Thank you, Michael. That was amazing. Now I think I can be in the movie too. All right, so we want to open it up for Q&A. We have a little bit of time for some questions, so please just ask away.
Cool. Should we pass over the mic, maybe? Maybe help you.
Maybe we'll take a few questions and then, yeah.
Thank you. Michael, I haven't read the book yet, but just from listening to this discussion, you are writing a story that has been written throughout the centuries. And you are presenting sort of the archetypal hero who goes through a journey and then comes out on the other side with a story to tell and a set of gifts that are greater than when he went into it.
Yeah.
And it just strikes me that, you know, I can go back and think about many books that I've read that have this same theme. And I wanted to ask you, what are the authors? Who are the authors that inspire you, that maybe are somewhat reflected in this novel, and that you think are part of who you are becoming as an author?
Yeah.
Should we take a few more questions and then I kind of, yeah?
Okay.
So hi, my name's Eddie. Not nearly as profound
Oh, stop
as
it.
Maria, but I guess I had sort of assumed that by writing it in Honduras, the future that you were writing about would be in Honduras, which is what thought that I found really kind of amazing, but apparently it's not. But my question is then, therefore, by writing it in hot, terribly hot, dusty Progreso, and the poverty and like the opposite of the academy you just described, I wonder what, did it affect what you wrote, or?
Cool. That's a good question.
All right, I have two questions. The first is, have you considered making it at some point an audiobook? And if so, would you narrate it? And second question is, we've all heard about writer's block and the challenges of overcoming writer's block and coming up with new ideas and keeping that train going. What were some of the things you did throughout this process to cope with that, to overcome it, to channel it, and to manage writer's block?
Cool. Should I take that cluster of questions?
Yeah, do you want to take those
first?
three
Yeah.
and then
Okay.
maybe some more?
Okay, not easy ones to answer, but I'll try my best. So I think, yeah, maybe the question around authors, it kind of relates also with the authors that like I'm inspired by. And I really like, I think I said this also in another session, like I'm not a profound reader of science fiction, the genre, and it is a science fiction book. But there are some science fiction authors like Octavia Butler, Orson Scott Card, I think has also been kind of canceled. But he's written a really good book. Yeah, I think those are two science fiction writers whose work really, I find fascinating. And Orson Scott Card wrote Ender's Game, which many of you may have read, which also imagines a future world, a bit more, galaxy focused and aliens and that kind of stuff, which my book doesn't really do. But I think those of the genre are quite interesting. I like looking at kind of classics like Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. There's a lot of kind of books that would imagine kind of a dystopian future. Suzanne Collins with The Hunger Games, I think that's another one that I think I was reading at the time when I was writing, because that was 2011, 2012. And then even books like Harry Potter, like those, I'm not comparing myself to J.K. Rowling or Harry Potter, which is a lot to compare yourself to, but it's an incredible series and it kind of follows an underdog outcast story. And I'm committing myself to reread those books again because I haven't read them since like 2003. I love George R.R. Martin, who wrote Song of Ice and Fire. I could read those books over and over and over again because of the character development. And then just really good writers who do like magical realism, like Gabriel Garcia Marquez or Isabel Allende, who I think are really inspiring. So if anyone has any recommendations, please send them over. And I'm trying to read as much as possible also as I'm crafting the next version, the sequel. There was a question around setting. So it is far into the future. I kind of was like, okay, what would the future look like post-climate change? I imagine kind of like these great catastrophes that change the world structure and order. Climate is different now. I was living in Honduras and then eventually living in Sierra Leone, and I kind of was like, well, and there were really intense seasons, like intense heat, intense rain. Sierra Leone had like 6 months of dry season, 6 months of torrential rain. And so I kind of was like, well, could the climate in the US change in the future? Could it become kind of a dry, hot season, channeling the heat of El Progreso? So that's what I imagine in the future, and kind of being set where I'm from. Achawan is a Lenni Lenape word actually that means strength, which is kind of the Native American tribe from New Jersey. So I kind of wanted to have a root there with that, and just imagined the world being very, very different, how it's politically structured into prefectures, and also climate-wise, and how humans would be dealing with those changes. So it's very much different from the world that we know it today because of everything that we'd be going through. El Progreso was a difficult place to write the book actually because I was sweating half the time, like dripping on the computer. You overheat. Had no AC in the office or at home. It got very dusty. So I remember actually typing and just like my eyes crossing like this, and then just like kind of keeling over, and then waking up, and then trying again. So I think a lot of it was actually written in a haze. But anyway, it was a special place and time to actually try. And then you'd kind of blow a fan at yourself, but sometimes it was just blowing hot air at you and it wasn't really fixing things. Audiobook, there is an audiobook, so it is available. It's narrated by someone else who's excellent. Benjamin Koenig is the audiobook author, and he's fantastic. He's done an excellent job. So if you're interested in audiobooks, it's something to look out for. Maybe one day I will narrate an audiobook version of it myself. But for the meantime, he did an incredible job. So I'm super, super happy with that. Writer's block. I think a few things for writer's block is like having physical activity helps. So if something is stuck, walk, run, jog, do a yoga class, yoga. For me, the hardest part has actually been finding the time to write. So once I have the time, I think that's really helpful if I can carve it out. And I think as I've gotten older and maybe assumed roles of increasing responsibility, like work has become much more intense. So having the time and energy has been quite difficult. So I think I'm just happy to be writing when I have the chance to write. But I think, and also kind of working on different projects that activate different parts of the brain help as well. So if you're stuck on something, then at least you have something else in the pipeline that maybe will trigger another way of thinking. I think those are my thoughts on those questions. Any other? Yeah.
Thank you. I'm only a few chapters in, but just going on what I think basically has already been said, between the school driver and the academy and his father, a big Atlas, maybe Mexican wrestler type person, it just seems like over and over Ale confronts what should be structures that protect him, but that kind of just are inert or abandon him outright. And I was just wondering if that was deliberate, or if it's just something that just is a product of happenstance, or and I know there's this big benevolent government, but anyway, I just wondered if that was deliberate.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
I know, Michael, I know the first draft was 2011 or 12 in El Progreso when I first met you. But speaking of writer's block or something, how come it's just coming out now?
That is a good question.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm gonna hop the mic. I have one more question. So you mentioned how you were influenced by living in Honduras, surrounded by all these young people that were ambitious, that were in that phase of life where they're exploring and growing. We lived together in Nicaragua afterwards, you and I, and then you moved to Africa. What about your experiences living in Sierra Leone are you drawing from as you continue to write part two? If you could speak to just any nuances or any particular things that you note from society living over there that you're incorporating.
Hello, Michael. What a pleasure to be here, get to hear you read some of these chapters, and the privilege to ask some questions. So I have at least two, and I'll try to be brief. First of all, I believe I had a chance to read the book, phenomenal, and I was able to read it thanks to your promotion on Instagram. So I'm curious, talk about multi-talented, fantastic writer, clearly a great public speaker. I understand you also have did you start TikTok? Threads? What else do you have going on to promote this book, and what has that process been like? It's more than just writing it. So I'm curious about that. I'm also curious about intentional choices around representation in the book, and creating a cast of characters that is culturally diverse, gender, everything. It seems like you were making some really intentional choices, so I'm curious how much of that was just telling the story, and how much of that was telling a story with a certain audience in mind, or thinking about creating representation in literature where maybe in this genre there hasn't historically been as much. So I'm curious to hear a little bit about that process.
Okay, where do I begin? Thank you for the fantastic questions. So I think the first one was around the structure. So I think it was very deliberate to have this future world be a world that wasn't a safe space for deficients or deficiently accelerated, right? So we've overcome all these ways of discrimination and stigma in other areas over the years, but then for some reason the deficients are almost kind of like an untouchable caste in a way. People don't like to touch them, so there's kind of a myth that if I touch a deficient, then that could affect my genetics, or that could affect my future children, or whatever. People don't want to engage with them. The mind readers, the people who can read minds, don't want to jump in deficiently accelerated people's minds because that could also be a source of contamination. So it's like this societal disgust with this classification of people, and so I wanted to kind of capture that disgust at various levels through the driving, through just getting to school, how difficult it was just to go from point A to point B. And then point A, even before at the household, there's a whole layer of stuff that happens there in the book as you identified. So that was very deliberate to make life really challenging. That said, there are a couple of champions in Alejandro's life, Yolanda being one of them, his mother also being another figure who's a true champion. So he has a few lights, and I think that also shows that there's a bit of hope, right? Humanity's not all that bad, there's some hope going forward, but he has a really tough time. So I was trying to craft that world in a way that made it one that was not friendly towards the deficiently accelerated. Around drafting, so yeah, the first draft was 2011, 2012. I can't remember when I started, probably 2012, 2013, started trying to pitch it to different literary agents. And I was getting a lot of interest in the idea, and agents asking for, send me your manuscript, send me the full manuscript. I think because it was a book that I was kind of learning more about writing and kind of testing that area and exploring. Writing books did not come naturally to me, so I've always enjoyed writing, but to actually write and craft a book, it's really hard, right? So I don't think the book was really ready in its earliest years, but I think people really liked the idea. So I did get an agent for a while who represented the book, and we worked on it over a while to improve it, pitch it to a few publishing houses. The agent ended up leaving the agency, and I was kind of dropped in that relationship. They assigned me to someone else, but then the person didn't specialize in the genre. Blah 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 blah. So that didn't really go well, and it was kind of disheartening because there was a lot of rejection at that phase of some of the publishing houses not taking it, feeling like abandoned by the agency. And then at one point when I moved to Sierra Leone, I kind of just gave up, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna put this one in the drawer, focus on work, focus on life. And it really wasn't until after Sierra Leone that when I moved to Nairobi in Kenya, I said, okay, I really like that idea. I want to take the manuscript, I want to strengthen it, I want to improve it, and then see where it will go. And I kind of bypassed the middleman, or the middlewoman, the agent, and just went to publishers that would publish the genre of book, but that would accept requests from authors directly rather than having to go through an agent. So that was that experience. And how come it's coming out now? I think that's the end of that. It took a long time, and it was a roller coaster. But interestingly, I think it was good because I was actually, as I was editing it over the years, all those experiences I had from Honduras to Colombia for a little bit, to Nicaragua, to Sierra Leone, to Kenya, all the people and all the influences I met along the way kind of factored into it. And even the students at the school, I tried to connect certain students with certain people and certain qualities that I've met over the years. So there's some sort of basis in reality in the characters. One of the characters actually, I have a dear, dear friend in Sierra Leone named Yolamba. And she was absolutely critical to my mental health and well-being when I was in Sierra Leone. She was our finance and admin manager for the organization I worked with, and was just like my lifesaver in so many ways. During Ebola, after Ebola, during mudslides and floods, and the rainy seasons and fires and COVID. So really, that was the rock figure I had in Sierra Leone. And I think the book needed a bit more personality in that role. And I was like, when I said goodbye to Yolamba when I left Sierra Leone, I was just like bawling in tears under my face mask. And I was like, actually, I think Yolamba needs to get into this book. And talked with her about it, worked a little bit on the character design with her, and it was a really fun process and different way of engaging with that friendship over time. So I think that's an example of how different experiences can contribute, and probably not getting it published right away made it a bit of a richer story. Social media. So I'm not a natural at social media. This has been a real struggle, not a real struggle, but it's been nice over the years to not really have to engage on social media because I've kind of focused on other things. And then I was put in touch with Kiana Stockwell, who we see here, through another writer who publishes with PHC Press. And we got a really strong recommendation also from my publisher to say, hey, I think the first thing they said to me was, your social media presence isn't great. So if you could do something to kind of rev that up a little bit, that would be fantastic. So working in partnership with Kiana has been fantastic. I've gotten much more actively involved in social media, but we work together to create social media calendars, we come up with ideas, we come up with content, we take pictures, and I think the artistry behind it and the creativity behind it, I really can attribute to Kiana's fantastic work. So if anyone needs to work with someone who's fantastic in social media on anything, whether it's campaigns, nonprofit work, launching a book, Kiana's the person, and I've learned so much along the way. And yes, I started a TikTok account, and I try my best with it, and try to make that work. But it's been a lot of fun, yeah. But a balance, because it does take up much more time than I anticipated. And as I'm trying to carve out time to write again, it's a challenge juggling all that. And then the last question was around representation, yeah. And I spoke a little bit about that. I tried to be very deliberate with the book of, I don't really mention anyone's skin color during the book at all. Because I thought in the future, I didn't really want the characters to be thinking about each other in terms of, oh, what color is this person's skin? Or to describe someone as mahogany, which you see in a lot of books, which I find a little cliche and annoying. Or books that only talk about people with a certain skin color who are not white, right? So the white people are assumed to be white because of their whatever. So I really wanted to just use cues and also leave it to the readers to kind of figure out whether it's through those cues or whatnot. And of course, in the process to create these wonderful characters who you see on the trading cards, which please take those and hand them out to people. And then it is a diverse cast. And I think I just tried to, in my mind, try to create something that was, reflective of society, right? Of people from different backgrounds, different walks of life, not necessarily knowing what the future would look like, but to make it inclusive. And I think it was, you know, thinking on my own like experience growing up, and even things that I would originally write, like my favorite show of all time is Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but when you go back and watch it again, it's like, oh God, like everyone is white. And I mean, they had some stuff happening, but it was like, okay, this is what we were brought up on, right? And how to challenge that, and you know, who is featured, who are characters, what does that look like going forward? So I think it's something I try to focus on, and do that in a subtle and fair way. But yeah, hopefully it comes across as good. Yeah. Time? Okay.
Michael, you are amazing. That was amazing. Thank you to all of you for being here today and participating and getting excited about this book. I do want to remind you that you can purchase the book here tonight, right over there. Plenty of copies. Michael will also sign and take pictures if you like. Please remember to write down your superpower and take some of the goodies. We also have a table filled with OYE t-shirts if you'd like to make a donation or a purchase. And I also want to pass it back to Michael. Oh wait, one more thing. Don't forget to sign up for his newsletter. He's a great writer, as we all know, so he'll also email you. His website is michaelsolisauthor.com, so make sure you check it out. And I want to pass it to Michael to give his own thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Patrice. Thanks, everyone, for being here. I want to give a big shout out also to Mohsen and Eric in the back for housing me during my time in DC, trying to reduce the expenditure of my stay while I'm in DC, which has become much more expensive than it was 10 years ago when I was last here. But thank you for the hospitality and the friendship, and thanks to everyone for coming tonight. So yeah, we'll be selling the book through the Potter's House, so if anyone wants to buy a book or buy a gift for someone, you can do that tonight, and that will be coordinated by the Potter's House. We have a ton of books here, so please feel free. I'll be donating a percentage of the proceeds that I receive to OYE, so we'll be giving some money through OYE if you buy a book here tonight, which is fantastic. You can also donate to OYE. If you want to donate to OYE, you can learn more about them on their website. You can buy some OYE merch, which we have over there in the back of the room, some nice OYE t-shirts. So that will be great. Please, if you do read Deficient, if you can review it on Amazon or Goodreads or whatever site where you've purchased the book, please do. It really helps for a first-time author with a kind of a small publisher to, you know, every review counts, right? So that would be really helpful. And then I think one big thank you to the Potter's House for everything that you've done, for hosting this event, for allowing us to be here, allowing us to put up our signs and all the balloons and everything like that. So we really appreciate that support and the fantastic work you do as a nonprofit. Big thanks to the OYE Familia. Could not have done this without OYE. So super grateful for that experience, for taking a chance on me, and hopefully I've given back to OYE as much as I can. And thank you also to Kiana for all the work that went into this event. Yeah. To Patrice for being the host of the most. So yeah, thank you so much for your MC and your friendship and your beta reading over the years, your honesty and your constructive criticism.
You'll get that from Patrice.
All right, I'll pass it back over.
Thank you.
I think that's it. All right, thanks everyone. Good to see that. And please take pictures and post them on social media.